All right, welcome back. It is Larry Hoy, biker writer legend, and we're getting ready to start First Chapter Podcast. The opportunity that I can introduce you to some of my favorite books out there, and we're going to introduce that by reading the first chapter of the book. So let's see what's on deck. First chapter. All right, everybody's been asking, when is it time for Hit World? Today's the day. All right, we're going to open up with Trashman. This is the first book in the Hit World series. Hit World, where anything you dream of, it's possible. So, we're going in with Agent Steed. He is the veteran of the team. And let's see what's going to happen. And, first thing, let's check the back of the book. Everything you don't believe is real. And Steed learned that the hard way. When the 9/11 attacks wiped out America's government and the timid remnants refused to commit the U.S. military, patriotic mercenaries went abroad to hunt down those responsible. They were the life-enders who executed the responsible terrorists on live TV. Seeking to lessen the crime rate back home, the government allowed them to form Life Enders Incorporated to perform contract killings for anyone who could afford to hire them, but only licensed shooters could accept a contract, which ensured the government got their cut. After fighting overseas to avenge his wounded country, Duncan Steed built a lucrative Life Enders franchise and lived well until he fell in love with the wrong woman. After that, nothing ever made sense again. When Steed breaks the one unbreakable rule of shooters, for love, naturally, he quickly discovers that reality bears no resemblance to what he'd been taught. The first hint is when the orange rhino charges through a rip in the sky. Let's have a look inside Chapter 1. The blonde was bleached, like raptor bones frozen in Cretaceous mud. Lumped into the chair beside her, the guy's fleshy jowls sagged like raw bread dough. Jewels glittered on most of their 20 fingers, and they both smelled nice, like those French milled soaps hotels put in the baskets in the bathrooms. You've read the contract, I presume? I said. You know my fees? The terms are acceptable. The money's no problem, Mr. Devlin said with a dismissive wave, as if I was just another underling. Experience taught me that when people said money wasn't a problem, it was a problem. People for whom money really wasn't a problem didn't have to say it. I leaned back in my swivel chair with the lumbar support and fired up a smoke. His piggy little eyes widened as I inhaled. Would you mind putting that out? He said, as if I'd committed a crime. Which, technically I had. It was just that, with all the other shit the world had been through in the past couple of decades, enforcing anti-smoking laws wasn't high on anybody's agenda. Yeah. Thank you. I meant that, yeah, I would mind. His eyebrows shot up, and I guess my client wasn't used to somebody else being in charge. As for Blondie, she stared at the cigarette like it was a well-chilled martini, or a male stripper with 3 legs. So, who do you want dead? I asked. The word dead got his attention, and his demeanor changed like he finally figured out this was my office, not his. The man glanced to either side as if he could spot my hidden cameras and microphones, and wiped his generous forehead with a handkerchief. Exactly how confidential is this conversation? He asked. His right thumb and index finger tapped each other like a John Bonham hammering a drum kit. He's the kind of mark I love playing poker with, rich and unable to hide his anxiety. I'm bound by the ethics of my profession and my organization, I said. I pointed to the twin frames holding my license, my certificate of membership in the North American Life Enders Association, and my franchise authorization, as well as all applicable laws. It's confidential as a doctor, patient, lawyer, client privilege. It's all spelled out in the contract. You have no cameras or microphones in here? Of course not. I lied. 4 microphones and 6 cameras caught everything. Well, you see, we've heard... He glanced at Blondie, a.k.a. Ms. Devlin, who reached out and rubbed the back of his hand. We've heard things. People like you who carry out the contract and then inform the victim's family who hired you drumming up business, so to speak. You've seen my commercials during the daytime talk shows, usually packaged with some ambulance-chasing lawyer's promise to get you money the insurance company doesn't want you to know about. I was the grinning guy who came on in the end and said, if they don't pay, let us slay. On the city buses and billboards, that was shortened to, you pay, we slay. At no point was there ever an us or we, only a me. But it sounded better if the people thought you were big. Assassins, by and large, are a live and let live sort, slow to anger. Ours is not a business that lends itself well to quick displays of emotion. But what Mr. Devlin was insinuating was the deepest insult of someone in my profession could suffer. I don't do pro bono work, I said in a low voice. Don't tempt me to change my mind. He blanched and rose from his chair, mopping a now outbreak of sweat. Keeping his guy dry must be a full-time job. I beg your pardon, sir. I'm not very good at this sort of thing. I meant no offense. He began inspecting the books I keep on my shelves to impress clients, nervously distracting himself from his faux pas, and stopped at the same one they always stop at, the one with the infamous name on the spine. He looked directly at me. It's signed by the author, I said. In 1925, the year it was published. It's a first edition. He wasn't very famous then, and the book's mostly gibberish. Nobody read it, but eventually everybody bought it. You're a Nazi? I'm a collector. Call it my retirement fund. Inevitably, his eyes strayed to the shadow box behind the bookcase with the inscribed photo of President Heston in a 3-inch square of blood-stained linen. Is that from... Yeah, he's a bleeder. You were in the room? I was, I said, not bothering to sound humble, like some of my friends did. We were badasses and knew it. I didn't see any point in false modesty. Can we please return to the business at hand? Who is the victim? Tell him, dear, the blonde said with a gentle prod. It's all right. Tell him. After he still hesitated, however, her tone changed, and the prod was now more of one designed for the cattle. Tell him, you idiot. What a sweetheart. Devin sent back down and wrung his hands like a teenage girl, overreacting in a high school production of A Streetcar Named Desire. My daughter, he finally said. God help me, I want you to kill my daughter. Blondie snorted and shook her head derisively at her pudgy husband. If she'd asked me to do it, I would have come right off her shoulders. I'd try not to judge my clients, but sometimes people just rub you the wrong way and you can't fake it. That's one reason I smoke, to hide the traces when my face betrays my true feelings about a client. Kids die all the time. Car wrecks, meningitis, freak accidents on the playground. There was a 9-year-old kid playing baseball, got struck in the chest by a pitch. He keeled over dead. The ball wasn't thrown hard enough to break a window, yet it struck him in just the right spot at just the right time. Interrupted his electrical impulses from his brain to his heart. That was that. But hiring to have one killed is a different. Sure, I've met children in my life who should have been killed, mostly in line at the grocery stores and movie theaters. I say that in jest. Mostly. Killing a kid crosses a line I'm not prepared to cross. But Dawn Devlin wasn't technically a kid. So if Devlin wanted me to kill his adult daughter, what of it? I had hired somebody to check these new clients out before I met with them, so I knew their whole backstory. My guy found out that the client, Leonard Ackworth Devon, was having money problems, the sort that have plagued short, dumpy men with generous wives for centuries, keeping them in diamonds, fancy cars, expensive vacations, and all the trappings of the sugar daddy scene. Before he reached 40, he owed a brokerage firm with 50 salesmen peddling junk bonds to the people with little money and less sense. He made his money in bonds, but most of his assets weren't liquid, which meant a constant juggling act between credit cards and escrow accounts to keep Blondie happy, if that was possible. They kept him in a perpetual cash crunch. Blondie's real name was Lila. She was the first Lila I'd ever met. She was his third wife and not the intended target's mother. Much better looking than most of the other third wives, and certainly more expensive. She was gorgeous in a whorish kind of way, but also in the wrong side of 40 and starting to show it. As the wrinkles set in, it took more and more expensive baubles to hide them, or rather distract people's attention from the beginning turkey neck lines in her forehead. So, the bills mounted while cash dwindled. Something had to give, and it wasn't going to be Lila Devine's plastic surgery schedule. The allowance money on his daughter received was more than enough to cover her medical bills, or so she said after her fifth martini, while lunching with friends at an upscale bistro. My PI buddy doesn't miss much and loves lunching at expensive bistros when somebody else is paying. In this case, me. He recorded every word and had a snifter of Corsair XO with dessert. There's nothing cheap or sober about James Holliday. How old is she? 19, Blondie answered with the eyebrows raised and a slight smile. Old enough to be killed. Legally, yes, I said. I trickled smoke out of my nose to watch her reaction. She didn't flinch. She reminded me of a snake on the hunt. I even looked to make sure her pupils were round, not like slits on a viper. My precious darling doesn't mince words, Devon said. In respect, she has an old soul. He reached out to caress her hair, but she turned away, making me wonder where his hand had been and trying to remember if I'd shook it. I wanted to tell that her old soul was probably as old as her profession, but didn't. Cash is king, after all, and I don't give a two shits if paying me left him cash poor. He had plenty of assets to liquidate. I've always been able to sense danger ahead of time, and I'd known who was dangerous and who wasn't until I was 8 or 9. I thought everybody could do the same thing. I also thought seeing people surrounded by colors was normal, which I made the mistake of mentioning to Gloria Twiddle in the 7th grade when all of her friends earned me the nickname Crayon. I tried to fake liking Devon, not only because there was no way to know how many more people he might want dead. I wanted the business, of course, and while hiring me to execute his daughter made that impossible, I could and did aim for civil. But I had to meet a lot of people like Devon who substituted assholiness for the pain of growing up bullied. I recognized it because it was my life story. Why do you want her dead, Mr. Devlin? Why do you want to know? Blondie said in a fake, sweet, but really cold voice. It was the same tone used by old Southern matrons when they said, bless your heart, but really meant drop dead. Her curled lips and her upturned nose reminded me of a surprised chicken looking down its beak at me. I hoped the balloons in her chest stayed inside the minimal restraint of her low-cut black gown because I wanted to hate her. I mean, really deep down, sanctimonious, soul-satisfying hate. And I knew if those 38 double Ds popped out for a visit, lust would override my hate. Did I mention I love slutty women? I crushed out my smoke. I have to presume the 19-year-old target is in good physical condition and can take measures accordingly. To do that, it helps to know why she's the target. For instance, if she regularly shoots at neighbors with an AR-15, I need to know. The ethics of my profession are clear, and that judging clients is the equivalent of bringing braised kittens and puppies for a fundraising dinner at a local animal shelter. We're not supposed to care why you want somebody killed, only whether you can afford it or not. For some reason, I keep digging away at Devon. In the end, who cares why our customers want somebody dead? It won't change anything. But I did want to know. Her name is Dawn, he said. Dawn Mary Devon. You shouldn't have any trouble. She's quite small. My baby girl can't weigh more than 110 pounds in a wet t-shirt. I wish he hadn't mentioned a 19-year-old female in a wet t-shirt. She joined the Peace Corps right out of high school, and now she's doing something else. There's a foundation that builds schools down in Central America. She's there now. She's building a school? Yeah, but it's not like what you're thinking. The children down in those hellholes go to school in the dirt, in front of somebody's hovel, out there in these jungles somewhere. People like my daughter help pick them up. They pick up plastic bottles and that are thrown everywhere. They stuff it with trash and build walls out of them. Slather on a coat of mortar, pour a concrete floor, screw on a metal roof. They call it a school. Fascinating. And what, this offends you? On my word, no. I couldn't be prouder of her. Trying to bring civilization to those people. Uh-huh, I said, as if that made sense. Oh, gag, Blondie said. I doubted she had gagged for a long time. That self-righteous little bitch does that for cover, to make everyone think she's Little Miss Sweet and Innocent. Why do you say that, Miss Devon? Call me Lila. That's the last thing I wanted to do. Miss Devlin, it's more professional, and a pro acts like a pro. I said this wondering if she'd catch on the double entendre. She did, and curled her lip again. I wanted to ask her if she was flirting or if this was doing an Elvis imitation, but I managed to keep quiet. Think what you want of me, Mr. Steed. You will anyway. But my husband is a good man who's blinded by the snarling mongrel hiding behind his daughter's oh-so-innocent blue eyes and white teeth. She's trying to have me killed because she wants daddy's money all for herself. She's a monster. As she spoke, Mr. Devlin tinkered with his phone, found what he sought, and held it out for me to see. It was a photo of a young woman with a bright smile and sunshine in her hair. She was holding a butterfly in her palm and appeared to be giggling. Those were the things I was supposed to focus on. Instead, I was focusing on what was behind the butterfly. I kept a professional mask on my face, but inwardly felt like a real creep. If Helen of Troy looked even half as good as Dawn Devlin, it was no wonder that all the Greece spent a decade killing each other over her. She was wholesome, innocent goddess. Those bright blue eyes had no doubt broken more than one heart during high school, because after 5 seconds, she was breaking mine. This was going to be like killing the Easter Bunny. All right, everybody. There you go. This is book 1 in the Hit World series. This is the origin story of Steed, the trash man. When nobody else can do the job, you call the trash man to take out the trash. All right. I'm glad we finally got around to Hit World. Keep on with the channel. There's going to be a whole slew of more coming. The next one is going to be Bullet. That's my book. So, anyway, I'll be seeing you. Have a good time. See you next week. Oh, and if you get a chance, reach out to Bill and tell him you saw the book here and you can't wait to get a copy for your very own. Talk to you later. Bye. Hey, thanks for staying to the very end. So, this has been First Chapter Podcast by Larry Hoy, biker writer legend. You can find me on Facebook, Larry Hoy Author, or you've got access right now on my YouTube channel. So be sure you subscribe, click the button down there. That way you'll be up on all of them. I release videos about once a week. If you want your book to be, if you're an author and you've got your book ready, send me an email. Let me reach out to you and we'll get your book on First Chapter. In the meantime, if you'd love to support my page and my mission, boom! Right there, Demon's Kiss is the most recent in the Hit World series. It's the continuating story of Luther Sweetwater, the rookie of the team. So, until next week, stay good, y'all.